Hello Stampers, and thank you so much for joining me today. This is Laura Buechler of Inkyfingers Papercrafting, your independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Nanaimo, BC. Now this week's video is an introduction to Stampin' Up! Products, what makes them different, why I love them, and a little bit about how to use them. This is the usual spiel that I give at workshops or at home parties when I have brand new stampers in attendance. Now, usually when we think about stamping, we think of these. A giant wooden block with a red rubber stamp that's permanently stuck to it. Well, Stampin' Up! Has changed that. Instead of using wooden blocks, we use these beautiful see-through acrylic blocks, which come in all kinds of sizes. So instead of having a wooden block attached to every single one of my stamps, I just use this assortment of acrylic blocks, which I can use with my whole collection of stamp sets. Now this gives us three huge advantages. First of all, it allows us to store stamp sets in these handy cases, which are the same size as a DVD case because it's only storing the stamps in this case. We're not storing the blocks here. That means I can store way more stamp sets in a small amount of space. And then secondly, we only have to pay for and store one collection of blocks that we then use for all of our stamps. And best of all, the blocks are see-through, which means we can see exactly where we're going to be stamping. Not so much with the wooden block. So, how do you choose the right size block for your stamp? My guideline is choose the smallest block that still fits your stamp. If you use a block that's too small, you won't be able to stamp the whole image. If you use a block that's too big, you'll probably end up rocking the block and get extra ink on your project. So just like Goldilocks, you want to use the block that's just right for your stamp. You'll also notice that there are two different styles of stamp available through Stampin' Up! Some stamp sets, like this one, Nature's Beauty, are produced in red rubber, and they're called cling stamp sets. Other stamp sets are produced in photopolymer, and these stamps you can actually see right through. Which makes them perfect for two-step stamping and other techniques. The next thing I want to show you is how to open and close the ink pads. Now for many years, Stampin' Up! Produced these ink pads. I call them the old style ink pads. And one thing you'll notice about them is that they do not have a flat profile. That makes them a little bit more difficult to store, which is why last year, in 2018, they came out with these beautiful new flat, stackable ink pads that are so much easier to store. I still have some of these old ink pads because the colors are still current, but any ink pad that you buy now from Stampin' Up! Is going to come in this beautiful flat profile ink pad style. So if you come to one of my classes, you might see an old style ink pad right alongside a new style ink pad, and you'll need to know how to open and close both of them. So for the old school one, you push with your thumbs at the front of the ink pad just until that lets go, and then you flip it over, slide it into place until it clicks, and then you're ready to use the stamp pad. With the new style, instead of pushing from the front, you're going to lift. It's kind of like opening a compact. So you just lift straight up, flip it all the way over, slide it into place, and then that's ready to use. I'll show you each of those again. Now to close the old style ink pad, put your fingers in this little gutter here, pull, slide, flip, and click. And with the new style, it's quite similar. Again, you put your fingers in this little gutter and you just pull, and you keep pulling all the way, and then flip it and click it into place. Now, if you're observant, you might have noticed there's something really special about both of these ink pads, which is while you're opening them, you're flipping them over. What that means is that when it is closed and stored, it's stored upside down. This is true of both the old and the new ink pads. That ink pad is stored upside down, which means that when I open it up to use it, all the ink is already at the surface of the ink pad. It's not down at the bottom. Gravity is working for us when these ink pads are in storage. So we don't have to press and grind our stamp into the ink and get our block all covered in ink. We don't have to do that. Instead, I recommend that you just lightly tap and your stamp is going to get perfectly inked up. So now with this perfectly inked stamp, we're ready to stamp. But before I stamp on my white cardstock, which in this case is standing in for my project, the very first thing I'm going to do is stamp on this grid paper. Anytime you come to a workshop with me, you're going to find grid paper like this at your spot. And it's there, of course, to protect my table from the ink and the adhesive and all the other things that we're going to work with. But it's also there for you to use for two important reasons. First of all, it's for practice, especially when you're new and you're not quite sure how hard you need to press that stamp down, or how straight it's going to be, or how is that color going to look? Is it going to look the way you want it to look when you stamp it? So this is for you to practice with. Hey, that looks pretty great. I'm really happy with it. Now I'm ready to stamp it on my project. Of course, I will need to ink it again. And there we go. Lovely little snowman image. Now you'll notice as I'm stamping onto my paper, I'm going straight down and straight up. A mistake that a lot of newbies make is to go down and kind of wiggle around, and you get something like that. Or especially with the rubber stamps, let's get this cute little bunny here. What you might end up with if you press and wiggle. Oh, now I'm trying to make a mistake and I can't. Ah, there we go. Get these, I call them halos. So that's from the edge of the stamp touching the paper instead of just the raised part of the stamp. So if you are going straight down and straight up, that will not happen. Again, that's a great time for you to practice first on your grid paper and make sure that you're able to stamp it without any halos. And when you've got that figured out, then you're ready to stamp on your actual cardstock. There's another reason why you need to use your grid paper, and I'm going to show it to you now. When you finish stamping and you're ready to either put the stamp away or you're going to pass it to another workshop attendee for them to use, you want to clean it first. So your first step is to just stamp off on your grid paper a bunch of times to remove any excess ink. Now, of course, there's still ink on there, so we're going to use this Simply Chamois to clean it. All right, that's looking really clean. I'm going to test that it's clean by stamping it on my grid paper, and yes, it is clean. There's another way to clean your stamps, which is the Stampin' Scrub, which has a wet side and a dry side. I haven't used this very much since I got my Simply Chamois, but I'll show you how to use it, because you might still have one, or you might see one if you're coming to my Christmas mega class, because I don't have enough chamois for every table. So you can see, for one thing, the Stampin' Scrub is much bigger than the chamois, which is why I mostly have switched to the chamois, because it takes up less space on the table. You'll need some Stampin' Mist, and you're going to spray that on the wet side. So I'm going to use, remember this stamp that I was cramming into the ink pad? I'm going to clean this one off now. And of course, I'm going to start by stamping it off on my paper. And then use the wet side of the scrub to wash it. And the dry side to dry it. And then we're going to test it. Is it actually clean? Yes, it is. It's not leaving any ink behind. Let's bring back our cute little snowman here, because I want to show you how to use some of these coordinating punches. Now this snowman is from the Snowman Season stamp set. And there's a coordinating punch that you can buy with it called the Snowman Builder Punch. Punches, again, store flat, very, very handy. So when you first encounter a punch, you're going to need to slide this little thumb lock over to open it up so that you can actually punch with it. It's really nice that you can close it up and lock it and then store it flat, but when you want to use it, you have to open it up. And I always punch while looking at the bottom here, because then I can slide in my cardstock, line it up within that little shape, and see exactly where I'm going to punch. And there's my beautifully punched out snowman. Stampin' Up! Also has lots of different shape punches, like this one, the story label punch, as well as circles and ovals and all kinds of other different shapes like that. And those are great for adding sentiments to your project. So for example, I could stamp my Let It Snow. Open up the punch, slide it in, make sure it's centered, and then punch that out. Got the start of a cute little project here. One last thing I want to talk about with Stampin' Up! Is their color coordination. I have always raved about this because they make it so easy to make your project look amazing. Unlike some other product lines, with Stampin' Up!, their colors are carried across their different products. So for example, this card here was created with products from the Wrapped in Plaid suite. And you can see I've stamped a sentiment here in Shaded Spruce ink. Now look how that Shaded Spruce ink matches perfectly with the Shaded Spruce cardstock and with the Shaded Spruce parts of the Designer Series paper. And if I had a Shaded Spruce ribbon, that would match too. Or if I had my Shaded Spruce blend, that would match. And if I had Shaded Spruce embellishments, that would match. Or again, the Cherry Cobbler from the Designer Series paper matches perfectly with the Cherry Cobbler cardstock. And that would match perfectly with the Cherry Cobbler ink or embellishments or blends and so on and so on. So you never have to wonder when you're laying out your project and trying to figure out how to make it work. You never have to wonder whether the colors are going to match, because Stampin' Up! Has done that work for you and provided you with these beautifully color matched products. So you know that you can put together your project and it's going to look amazing. So that's my spiel about Stampin' Up! And why I love it. I hope it was helpful to you and that you're a little bit more confident now about how to use these amazing products. And if there's something specific that you're still wondering about, please let me know and maybe I'll cover that in a future video. Remember, you can purchase all the products shown on my website, inkyfingers.ca, and you'll also find more project tutorials, current promotional details and catalogs, my local workshop schedule, and the sign up for my monthly email newsletter. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I want to let you know that I have a Facebook page under Inkyfingers Papercrafting where you can join a weekly card sketch challenge and win a prize from me. Now, if you do place an order, please use the current hostess code, which you can find on my website, because everyone who uses that code is going to get a free gift from me. If you'd like to earn your own hostess rewards, all you need to do is place an order of over $200 or contact me and we can start planning an online or in-home party. Drop me a line for more details. Have a great day, everyone, and happy stampin'. Bye.